During the late 1960s and throughout the 70s and early 80s, Dean Kenyon was one of the leading chemical evolutionary theorists in the world. And like others in his field, he was trying to explain how life on Earth began through a purely natural process.
At the time that biochemical predestination came out, I and my co-author were totally convinced that we had the scientific explanation for origins.
Many scientists embraced Kenyon's ideas, and over the next 20 years, Biochemical Predestination became a best-selling text on the theory of chemical evolution. Yet 5 years after the book's publication, Kenyon quietly began to doubt the plausibility of his own theory.
It was during that whole period of time that my doubts about certain aspects of the evolutionary account became apparent. When coming into contact with a powerful counter-argument given to me by one of my students, and I could not refute that counter-argument.
Kenyon was challenged to explain how the first proteins could have been assembled without the help of genetic instructions.
And so my doubts about whether amino acids could order themselves into meaningful biological sequences on their own without pre-existing genetic material being present just reached, I guess for me, the intellectual breaking point sometime near the end of the decade of the 70s.
As Kenyon reevaluated his theory, new biochemical discoveries further weakened his conviction that amino acids could have organized themselves into proteins.
The more I conducted my own studies, including a period of time at NASA Ames Research Center, the more it became apparent that there were multiple difficulties with the chemical evolution account. And further experimental work showed that amino acids do not have the ability to order themselves into any biologically meaningful sequences.
Faced with mounting difficulties in his own theory and a growing body of scientific data about the importance of DNA, Kenyon was forced to confront the absolute necessity of genetic information.
The more I thought about the alternative that was being presented in the criticism and the enormous problem that all of us who worked on this field had neglected to address, the problem of the origin of genetic information itself, then I really had to reassess my whole position regarding origins.
Chance, natural selection, and his own theory of self-organization had all failed to explain the origin of genetic information. Now Kenyon saw only one alternative.
We have not the slightest chance of a chemical evolutionary origin for even the simplest of cells. So the concept of the intelligent design of life was immensely attractive to me and made a great deal of sense, as it very closely matched the multiple discoveries in molecular biology.
In the years since Kenyon's rejection of chemical evolution, science has revealed the details of an entire system of information processing that bears the hallmarks of intelligent design.
Do many of your colleagues support your new position?
Well, most of my colleagues, I would have to say the majority of them are not in support of my views on origins, my new views on origin, first life, and on evolution. There are some of those who are also not in support of my being able to discuss these matters in class. There are a few who are sympathetic to an open and free discussion of these matters, although not all of those are sympathetic to my views themselves. A couple are. Now, I'm not the only one who in the science faculty here who would have views like I do about origins. As to why there is this attitude on the part of the faculty, I'm not sure that I could give a quick answer. I mean, you have to ask them, of course, but I think deeply ingrained habits of thought is a factor. When one has been trained to accept and to really be only aware of one particular explanation of origins, the Darwinian account and the standard chemical evolutionary material, and not ever having read a single critical paper, or certainly not having read a single article defending intelligent design, perhaps it's not surprising that there would be this kind of reluctance to support this. I suspect that some of them may themselves suspect that a rather major reorientation of thinking would follow if they were to give serious consideration to the literature on this subject, and have said, well, I just don't want to do that. It's going to involve something that I'm not prepared to do in the way of major reassessment of some parts of biology, although I believe much of biology will remain intact.
Why is an intelligent design or creationist interpretation of the scientific data not acceptable to many scientists?
Well, I think we have here an example of, again, the deeply ingrained habits of thought that are connected with Darwinism and neo-Darwinism, and this commitment to philosophical naturalism, that the only permissible explanations in science are those that involve observable and testable natural processes. And when you move into the area of intelligent design, although you argue to intelligent design through a dense field, if you will, of empirical data, and it's only after extended encounter with those data that you come out at the end with an intelligent design conclusion, nevertheless, it makes many scientists uneasy, because this is thought of, this causation, intelligent causation, as ultimately untestable by the traditional methods of science. So if you define science as excluding the possibility of intelligent cause at the outset, then any proposal that is made, however many data back it, is ruled out of court from the beginning. So